Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you were with us last time, you'll know we ended on a really chilling note. August 1757, the siege of Fort William Henry.
Yes, a really brutal moment. Colonel Monroe, the British commander, he surrenders to Montcalm, thinking he's getting, the standard European honorable terms of war.
And that trust was, well, it was completely shattered.
Utterly. I mean, Montcalm himself tries to uphold the terms, but his Indian allies, they hadn't been consulted. For them, a surrender like this means plunder. It means captives.
The massacre that followed was it was horrifying. It sent shockwaves through the colonies.
But here's the really crucial part, the strategic twist that people often miss. Montcalm wins this huge victory, this massive psychological blow against the British, and then he just leaves. He withdraws immediately.
He doesn't press his advantage at all. Why?
He literally couldn't. This is so important. New France was starving. They'd had two disastrous harvests in a row, 56 and 57. He had to release his Canadian militiamen right away so they could go home and try to save whatever crops they could.
So he's winning on the battlefield, but losing the war against scarcity.
Precisely. His position was incredibly precarious. But of course, that's not the news that reaches London.
No, the news that reaches London is pure catastrophe, national humiliation. And that's our mission today. To really unpack that political storm in London, the rise of one man, William Pitt. Now he completely revolutionized the entire war effort.
He really did. It was the darkest hour for Britain. Fort William Henry was bad, but it was just one piece of a much bigger disaster.
You have to look at Europe, too, right?
Absolutely. The immediate crisis point was the Convention of Closter 7. This was September 1757.
That's the one with the Duke of Cumberland, the king's son.
Exactly. He's forced to sign this humiliating suspension of arms in Hanover. For King George II, this was an unbearable insult to his pride, to his German territories.
And he didn't take it well.
Not at all. He was furious.
Yeah.
So enraged that he forces his own son, Cumberland, to resign all of his offices. So now you have a military and political leadership that is it's in chaos, fragmented, humiliated.
The perfect vacuum for someone like William Pitt to step into.
The perfect vacuum. And the sources describe him as this almost manic figure, so intense. He comes in saying he's an independent minister who would admit of no accommodation.
Sounds like a difficult guy to work with.
Oh, probably impossible. But that intensity was exactly what was needed. You have to remember, there wasn't a modern government bureaucracy. There was no machine to run a global war. Pitt had to do almost everything himself.
So how does one man coordinate a war from India to the Ohio Valley without just collapsing?
Well, he improvises brilliantly. He basically bypasses the old slow system and creates his own informal command structure. He works directly with two key people.
Okay, who?
Lord Anson, the head of the Navy, the First Lord of the Admiralty, and Lord Ligonier, the Commander-in-Chief of the Army.
So the three of them, they become the strategic brain.
They become a proto-general staff. It was a totally novel arrangement. By the summer of '58, this trio is running the war with a speed and a coordination that the French government, which was already struggling, just couldn't hope to match.
Okay, so that's the leadership. Let's talk about the resources, because this is where we get into Pitt's idea of total war, and the numbers are they're staggering.
They are. And for Pitt, total war meant mobilizing the nation's entire financial power to just crush New France. And the pillar of that strategy was debt. Massive, unprecedented debt.
The war was costing something like 20 million pounds a year.
An astonishing figure for the 1750s. Far, far more than tax receipts could ever cover. They were borrowing most of it. Pitt's gamble is that it was better to incur a huge debt to win quickly and decisively.
And he channels a huge chunk of that money directly to the American colonies.
That's the genius of it. This is how he solves all that friction that had plagued previous commanders. The arguments over quartering troops, who pays for supplies.
He just cuts through it with a blank check.
A blank check. He makes this powerful promise that the crown will cover the costs. It's not a demand anymore, it's an invitation, a partnership.
And how did the colonies respond to that invitation? Did they buy in?
The response was, it was incredible. Within a month of getting Pitt's assurances, the colonies voted to raise more than 23,000 provincial soldiers.
23,000? That's a serious army.
It's a massive mobilization. You have Connecticut raising 5,000 men, Massachusetts over 2,000, New York almost 2,700. This was a unified intercolonial effort on a scale they had never seen before.
And London's money made it all possible.
It did. At the end of the day, parliamentary reimbursements covered something like 35 to 42% of the colony's total spending on the war. That financial leverage bought them the manpower they desperately needed on the ground.
Okay, so that solves the army problem. But Pitt knew the real hammer, the real key to victory, was the Royal Navy.
Absolutely. The naval strategy was designed to be lethal. It wasn't just about blockading Canadian ports. The real target was the French economy's lifeblood, the sugar trade from the West Indies.
Choke off the money.
Choke off the money, and you choke off their ability to fight anywhere in Europe or America. And it worked.
Oh, quick.
Devastatingly quickly. By the end of 1758, British cruisers and privateers had cut French trade with the West Indies down to less than a quarter of what it was before the war.
And that naval chokehold,
Yeah.
it connects right back to what you said at the beginning about Montcalm's food shortages.
It magnified it tenfold.
Yeah.
If they were struggling in 1757, you can only imagine what it was like by 1758. The sources are just stark.
How bad was it?
By early April 58, the daily bread ration in Quebec City was down to 2 ounces.
2 ounces of bread a day. You can't fight a war on that. You can barely survive.
You can't. So Pitt's armies in 1758 were about to attack an enemy that was already physically exhausted and financially broken. He had the money, he had the men, and he had the strategy.
And he was, as you said, incredibly hands-on with that strategy, not just broad goals. He was micromanaging.
Oh, down to the tiniest details. He laid out a coordinated three-pronged defensive for 1758. First, he directs General Jeffrey Amherst to take the fortress of Louisbourg.
The gateway to Canada.
Exactly. And get this for micromanagement. Pitt personally insists that Amherst hire a specific guy, a Mr. Meeser from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to command 80 carpenters for the siege.
He's directing hiring decisions from London.
He knew that specific colonial skills were vital for a successful siege, and he made sure they got the right man for the job. That's how detail-oriented he was.
Incredible. So that's prong one. Louisbourg, what were the other two?
Prong 2 was on the New York frontier. General Abercrombie was ordered to move against Fort Carillon, that's Ticonderoga, and Fort St. Frederick, Crown Point.
The classic invasion route.
Right. And the third major push was out in the Ohio Valley. General John Forbes was given the job of marching on Fort Duquesne, the very place where Braddock had been so disastrously defeated.
And they also went after the supply lines, didn't they, Fort Frontenac?
They did. That was the linchpin. Fort Frontenac on Lake Ontario was the main supply depot for all the French forts to the west and south. Take that, and their entire western position starts to crumble.
So when you put it all together, it's a complete reversal of fortune. From the humiliation of Fort William Henry to this coordinated, well-financed, overwhelming strategy.
It is. Pitt took a nation that was on its knees and, through just sheer force of will and a ton of borrowed money, forged this total war machine.
But, and there's a thought here for you, our listener, to sort of mull over. While all that money was buying unity between London and the colonies, the actual experience of fighting together, that was creating a whole different kind of friction, wasn't it?
A profound friction, yes.
Yeah.
You have tens of thousands of colonial soldiers serving alongside professional British regulars for the first time on this scale.
And they're seeing a very different culture.
A very different and very rigid class system. They're seeing men being, and I'm quoting here, whipped or piqueted or some other ways punished for things that a colonial officer would never dream of doing. Especially for the New England troops, where maybe half the young men of that generation served. This was a huge shared experience.
Seeing the arrogance and the strictness of the British officer corps up close.
Exactly. They saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
And this experience of serving together but being so culturally different, it created this new kind of shared consciousness among the colonists. It really influenced how they saw the mother country.
So, ironically, the very war that Pitt paid for to unite the empire
Also planted the seeds for future conflict. An unexpected consequence, for sure.
What a fantastic point to end on. Next time on the deep dive, we will see Pitt's strategy in action. We'll start with the first great victory of this new era, the massive British offensive, and the successful siege and capture of Louisbourg in the summer of 1758.
That's the moment the tide truly definitively turns.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, please be sure to subscribe and maybe even leave us a review. We'll see you next time.